Welcome back to Switch to Linux. So we're going to just have a brief distro review. This is kind of a minor review. This isn't as much of a quick look, but it's also not a full comprehensive review because I've not had a chance to run this a lot extensively. What we are running on this computer is the KDE version of Sabayon, which is what I wanted to run as my media PC for a while, but there are complications with that. Which those complications lend themselves to either an advantage or a disadvantage, depending on the way you run it. And I'm guessing that these would apply to any Gentoo. Of course, Sabayon is an easy Gentoo install, so you don't have to spend, days upon days upon days compiling your computer. Now, here is the downside of Gentoo, to my understanding, and I am not a Gentoo expert, so I apologize if I'm speaking out of turn. The advantage, the reason people want to use Gentoo is because it produces a slightly lighter and system-specific Linux install. That meaning that most of the time when you run Linux, you get the giant Linux kernel and everything inside of it to run on pretty much any computer. For me, that is a massive, massive advantage because it means that Linux is generally very portable. So I can install it on one place and I can take it to another place. You can keep installs of Linux on a USB keychain, and if you happen to be at a friend's house, you need to check your email, you can plug in your keychain USB drive, boot off of any computer, do whatever you need to do without ever having to touch their computer. That is a major advantage, but Gentoo does not seem to have that same portability. Very much like the Windows system. When you install Windows, it installs specific to the system. The advantage is it loads a little bit quicker, which I can probably argue is not as big of an advantage now as it was 5 or 10 years ago when systems were not as big and beefy as they are now. And with that being said, though, much like the Windows system, if I install Gentoo on this computer, I can't put it on that computer. At least not without doing a lot of work. And that seems to be the problem I'm having. I'm not 100% sure that is the issue. But what I'm doing is I generally install all of the operating systems on the video production computer. The reason is the video production computer is designed with hot swappable drives. So I can disable all of the drives inside of the system and I don't have to worry about messing with a bootloader on some other drive. Versus the media PC where I run these distros, that's a traditional computer with hard drives inside. If I want to make sure I'm not messing with the bootloaders, etc., on that drive, I have to pull the thing out, disconnect everything, unscrew the things from the back of the computer, just kind of work through, tear out the drives or at least pull the SATA cables, and it kind of becomes more of a pain. And so what I generally do is I install them on this system and then I just move them over on the other system. I generally don't have any issues. The problem is Gentoo won't load over there. Probably for that very reason. So, with that being said, what are the advantages, what are the disadvantages of running maybe on the minor end Sabayon and maybe more on the greater end your Gentoo? Again, the major advantage is it's a little bit more streamlined. The downside, if you have to change your motherboard or some other major hardware component like a graphics card, this is probably going to give you an issue. Whereas most Linux distros, you can swap stuff around without any real problem. It's just going to load what it needs from the kernel on boot. And so that's kind of one of those things that you have to take in mind and weigh. That means that for me, I'm probably not going to run this as my media PC. I really wanted to, but at least we got this more greater comprehensive review. Like I said, it's not overly comprehensive, but we'll get a little bit better review out of this than I usually do with a quick look. So let's go ahead and have a look at the desktop setup. Okay, so here we are. Again, I did select the KDE option. When you download Sabayon, you have the choice of which desktop environment you want. There are a variety of them. I went with KDE because that's usually what I would run on the media PC if I have the option. And so I did want to go with more of a flat modern theme, something I don't usually do. on a Linux install, but I want to go ahead and run with it. And for whatever reason, like I said, it's just not booting up over there, which I suspect has more to do with the fact that it's Gentoo and it's just not loading properly. All right, so as far as what are the advantages, disadvantages of Sabayon, let's go ahead and start with the bad points. When I first installed it, they did have a graphical installer, which I forget the name of, but after the first update, the graphical installer went away. So everything I need to install now, I actually have to do through the terminal. If you're a seasoned Linux guy, you don't really care. But if you are a Linux basic guy, you kind of want that. Also, though, it makes searching for applications a little bit easier. I did also find a lot of the packages I wanted to use are not on the system. So the Media PC needs to have Skype on it so I can do some basic communication. I can't get Skype. There's, of course, a Flatpak for Skype, but there's no Gentoo Flatpak support. In fact, going through the Flatpak website, it looks like Gentoo is the only Linux distro that you cannot port it in. There is an unofficial overlay. I'm not messing with all that for a system that I can't get booted on the main system anyway. I did, however, find that a lot of the applications that I did want to run were in the repositories. So I'm running Simple Screen Recorder based upon suggestions when I did my one of my previous videos. Somebody says, "Well, you try out VocoScreen." So I was actually going to try that. It's not in the repository. At least I couldn't find it. Maybe I just didn't know how to spell it. But again, if I had a graphical installer, I would have been able to fumble around a little bit with it. The install prompts did give me a list of possible things. Did you mean this? But none of those were that. But Simple Screen Recorder was in the repos, so that's what I used. I also installed, but I didn't test Kodi. I installed GUVC View, which I'm using now to have my picture on the screen. So let's talk about the other applications in here. First and foremost is that desktop icons, I believe, are turned on by default. Everything is set to single click, and like you usually get in Plasma, you have the type of the application in the big letters and the name of the application in little letters. I don't like that. I prefer the name of the application in the big letters, so I just went ahead and swapped that around. Of course, I also got rid of history off of my application menu. This is the menu I prefer to use. This was the default. It is the menu I prefer to use on KDE. I just think it's a lot nicer. If you want a different type of menu, you can right-click, click on your alternatives, and you can choose the dashboard, the application menu, or this is the launcher. So depending on the thing that you would like, you just in KDE have the ability to switch to a different installer. And it looks like I'm not getting my my acceleration there, but that usually happens if I'm screen recording, so I'm not concerned about that. I do believe this is running Wayland, for those curious about that. Of course, here's what the application menu looks like. This might be more for some people, but again, with how flashy KDE is, I actually like to... I like the application launcher. It's actually my favorite one of these in KDE, so that's good. The other things is weird choices on applications. The only we have two web browsers, excuse me, by default. We have Google Chrome and we have Conqueror. Conqueror doesn't actually work well on my Debian system. I have not tried it out over here. I installed Chromium from the repositories. We don't have a built-in email application, an email client. I thought that was a weird choice, but we do actually have, let's see... mathematics, science, development, Qt-based designers. We do have Atom. Why did that get switched around? Apparently things got switched around when I was messing with my menus. Alright, well, you can actually fix that by, let's see, I believe it's changing the settings here. I remember how to do that. Show applications by name. When I change the menu, it resets that. So now we should be back. It doesn't appear to be back. There we are. Now we're back. Alright. So here we have those applications. You'll see there is no email application, and even under Office, there's no email application installed. I did not actually look at what version of these we have. Let's just open up the LibreOffice Writer. So it looks like we are getting version 6, it looks like, from the splash screen there. So that's actually good. We are getting very, very up-to-date packages. LibreOffice 6. Very awesome. First time I've installed a distro that came with the most up-to-date. And let's check the spelling, because some people really like me to double-check if the spelling app. So it is detecting your spelling by default, and it is giving us our synonyms by default. So that's actually excellent. I love seeing that. That's we're kind of moving into the advantages at this point. As we look at the applications, I thought that the games were the card games. This is actually the first time I saw one of the card game systems that I actually really like the design. The previous versions of your card games, I thought that they looked and felt clunky. And so here is this one here. I really just like the appearance settings. I like all of the options that we have as far as, what do the cards look like, things like that. These are big deals because we're trying to move people over to Linux. Like my mother, for example, she plays her card games on the computer, which has led to many viruses on her Windows computer. She checks email and she does web browsing. So next time I'm over there and it's just like the computer's running slow, I might just go ahead and throw Linux on the system. But I was very pleased to see that there is indeed a good card game system that looks nice, because I did find that the previous card games on Linux did not look quite as good. So of course that looks like a specific K application. As far as graphics, I installed GIMP. Let's go ahead and have a look at GIMP, see what version we have of that. Ooh, 2.9 development. That's new. I think I'm still running on an older version of GIMP on my other systems. Ooh, I like that it's the single mode. I have no idea why GIMP is always loaded with the windowed mode turned off. I really love the single window mode, and it's very refreshing to see that is the default. I don't know if that's the default to the new GIMP or if that's the default to the system. It must be the default to the new GIMP because I installed GIMP directly from the repos. Let's see, we looked in the office already. We do have our documentation, live help, a lot of information in there specific to the distro itself. Of course, our settings are the same settings you'd get on any KDE system. I also did notice I was trying to see as Discovery in here as a KDE installer, and it's not. So there is no graphic installer on the system at all. I don't know if there's something like Synaptic on Gentoo or not. And I think that's one of the things, as people have criticized Gentoo for, is not having a graphic installer. Sabayon is supposed to have a graphic installer. It was here, and then I ran updates, and then it disappeared. So, whatever. The other really big thing I liked about this is it has this thing here called Vault. And your Vault is basically a encrypted file system. So if you pull up your file manager, you'll see that it does show up in your it'll show up here in your desktop. So here is the Vault, and then you can go in here. So basically the idea is anything that you put inside of the Vault is locked inside of the encrypted part of the drive. So it enables you to have a little encrypted subset in your drive. This is great if you do store passwords on text files, and there are legitimate reasons to do that. I would never use a cloud-based passage manager. Some people like things like KeePassX that's just local based. Those can be great. Those can be a pain. I personally use a lot of, I'll use spreadsheets as my password managers and just password protect them. This gives you an extra layer of encryption. Now, when you first set up the Vault with the default encryption, it does give you a warning that the type of encryption on here is something that people could crack with enough resources, so you don't want to put this on a cloud somewhere where other people might have access to it. And so that is kind of one of the things that I really like about the system is it does have that Vault extra layer of security in here. So in case that your home folder or your your whole drive is not encrypted, you have that ability to have at least some layer of encryption on there. Okay, we have Atom as our default text editor. I didn't see if Kate was on here. Usually Kate comes with KDE, but I don't see that. I see Atom instead as a default editor. It does seem to take a while to load. And then, I did the basic desktop widgets, etc., things like that. So that's about all I'm seeing in the system. Once again, you do have to install things on this through the terminal. So I just, use user equo command, sudo equo install. So I installed all these. This is, like I said, I don't remember. Oh, Kdenlive. I installed Kdenlive. Let's go ahead and have a look at that as well. See what version we have of that. It should be... Okay, so it does look like the more recent versions. Ooh, we are missing that for the creation of DVD. Okay, actually, whoop, I didn't not want to abort. I just wanted to go ahead and run it anyway. Yeah, typing KDE on a KDE is not going to identify that. Just push OK to move beyond that. That just tells me I can't create DVDs with it. So 17.12.2 is our version of that. All right, so it closed on... No, it closed very expectedly. I closed it. Thank you, notifications. So that is just kind of a brief overview here of the system. Again, I would like to run this on the other computer. I'm just not going to go through the hassle of pulling all the drives and installing it directly on that computer at this time. I might down the road. I might go ahead and do that. So I did want to run this for a while, see how it works. As far as stability issues, I had a couple of little packets of instability, but that was during system updates. And so I'm saying I don't care, whatever. We'll see if those continue to show up after those updates were done. Basically, the thing that happened is I got the nice little log out. So the screen was broken. So actually, I took the photo with the phone so I can remember how to do it. How to do it. Basically, I had to go in there, open up another terminal, manually run unlock sessions, and then come back over and come back in. That's kind of what happened. But that happened during an update, so I would not criticize the system on that. The only real criticisms I have is some of the weird choices in applications. They got rid of things like Kate to install Atom. They have Conqueror and Google Chrome being the default browser, and no email application. Very new versions of everything else. Actually, let's have a look at VLC as well. I did not see what version of VLC we are running. So 3.0, I think that is the brand new one that came out. I've not had a chance to play with the new version of VLC. I use VLC, but I'm not a fan of it. I use it because it just works very well. A lot of compatibility. Let's see. Everything else is what I was expecting. It is very snappy. It is a nice, much snappier KDE than I have used. I'm not sure if part of that could be the fact that this computer has a lot better system stats than this computer. And so that's partly the reason. Another possible reason is I'm running this on an external hard drive rather than... Actually, though, I can't even say that because I do have an internal SSD on one of my KDE installs, and Conqueror is still pretty slow. Or not Conqueror... I'm forgetting my file manager name. Dolphin still seems pretty slow, whereas on this it seems a whole lot snappier. Dolphin seems a lot snappier on this than it does over there. That's another thing. Let's go ahead and see if network shares are working. No. Might be caused by an enabled firewall. Do we have a firewall installed? Firewall anywhere. Yeah, I can't. I should be able to get to Samba shares, but it's not seeming to allow me to do that. And I'm not sure what the issue is. Maybe there is a firewall on this system that's preventing it. I know there's nothing anywhere else that's preventing it. Let me... all the other computers are down right now. It's too early in the morning. All right. That is my take here on Sabayon. It seems pretty run-of-the-mill. Once again... probably just the Gentoo issue getting in the way. If I wanted to take the time to pull all these disks, run it over there, I might do that, but that's a little bit more involved than what I want to do. So I think what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to run deep on this for a while. I'm going to keep the install for this around, and maybe I'll come back and revisit this a later time. But hopefully this is a little bit better of what's in the basic operating system by default. It looks pretty nice. It looks pretty snappy. It's just the issue with Gentoo is it installs exactly what you need, so it makes Linux portability quite a bit lower than it should be. Of course, everybody complains if the kitty doesn't have an appearance, so hello everyone. Switch to Linux, it rocks. Thank you, kitty. Alright, so thanks for watching, folks. Once again, if you'd like to help support Switch to Linux, you can check out our support page, switchtolinux.com/support. Also have fun things like coffee mugs at shop.switchtolinux.com. And there's also some t-shirts and a few other odds and ends, including the mouse pad as well. So a lot of people like that mouse pad design. It is very nice, and product quality is pretty good over there. That will redirect you to Spreadshirt. So thanks for watching. I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.